Good morning, children. Welcome to my today's class. So today I shall start lesson number 2 of PUC second year. PUC second year lesson number 2 is Too Dear. T-O-O. Too Dear. This lesson is written by the author, the writer Leo Tolstoy. Leo Tolstoy is a Russian writer who primarily wrote novels and short stories. He is best known for two long novels, that is War and Peace, and the second one is Anna Karenina. So this is all about the writer, the author. Now coming to the lesson, Too Dear is a short story by Leo Tolstoy. The story depicts the modern system of governance. It depicts the modern system of governance. It tells us how the delay in court procedure, the delay in our court procedures, or the procedural lapses would convert the verdict of death sentence to life imprisonment. So this lesson is about the delay in the court procedures, or maybe the conversion of the death sentence to life imprisonment. So here a person was given the death sentence, and later how his death sentence was converted to life imprisonment. The story is about this. It raises a question on the ways of punishing the criminal and giving justice in this modern world. Here in this lesson, Too Dear means, too expensive. What it means? Too expensive. The punishment given to the man was too expensive. The punishment given to the criminal here in this case was too expensive. So children, let us see what is too expensive in this lesson. The story begins with the description of a place near the borders of France and Italy on the shores of Mediterranean Sea. It's a tiny little kingdom called Monaco. There were only about 7,000 people living in this place. That is, the word used in the textbook is inhabitants. The people living in that particular place, they are called inhabitants. So there were 7,000 inhabitants in that tiny island, that a tiny kingdom, not island, tiny kingdom called Monaco. This kingdom Monaco was so small that if the land in the kingdom were divided among the inhabitants, then there would not even be an area of land, an acre of land for each inhabitant. So if the land of Monaco was divided into the inhabitants residing there, then each would not even get an acre of it. So that was small that kingdom was. Monaco, though very tiny, has a real kinglet. Who is a kinglet? Kinglet means a small king. Like how we say kinglet. A small king is called a kinglet. Like any other real king, this kinglet of the toy kingdom. There was a kinglet for this toy kingdom. Toy kingdom because it was tiny, it was small. Monaco was a kingdom which was very small, which was very tiny. So they call it a toy kingdom. So there was a kinglet who lives in the palace. He has his courtiers, he had the advisors, the ministers, a bishop, and the generals. So a bishop is a senior member of the Christian clergy given the power to confer holy orders Bishop is a senior member of Christian clergy, given the power to confer holy orders. So, all these were there in this tiny little kingdom. Also, there was an army consisting of 60 men in all. Army consists of so many soldiers, but here 60 people were there, 60 men were there in that army. So, coming to page number 7, just to refer the text when you are watching this video. On page number 7 of the text we have, the author says that the army consisted of only 60 men, but still an army is an army. As elsewhere, there were taxes in this kingdom also, as there were taxes in the other kingdom, here also in the big kingdom, in the huge kingdoms. So here also there were taxes. There was a tax on tobacco and on wine, on spirit. There was also a poll tax. But since the kingdom was very small and the inhabitants were very few, the tax collected for the drinking and smoking was not adequate enough. Inhabitants were few, tax collected also was less. So this much amount was not enough to feed the king's courtiers and the other officials. It was not sufficient for the king. So the king was in search of a special source of revenue. And this revenue came from the gaming house. People played roulette in this gaming house. What is a roulette? A roulette is a gambling game. Roulette is a gambling game. So there was a gaming house where people played roulette. The keeper of this gambling house got a percentage on the turnover, irrespective of whether the people lost or won. Let the people win, let the people lose. This person who was taking care of that gaming house would get his percentage. So his income was fixed. What this person did was, he paid a large sum of this money to the kinglet. So this was one source of income for the kinglet. The reason why the keeper paid so much money to the kinglet was, why did he pay so much money to the kinglet? Because this was the only gaming establishment left in Europe. Why? This was the only gaming house? Yes, it was the only gaming house. It is mentioned in the lesson that the little German sovereign is a supreme person, the king, we can say the king. He used to keep gaming houses, but some years ago, they were all closed. Why they were closed? They were closed down because these houses did so much harm to the people. The gaming houses caused harm to the people. People would come to the gaming houses, they would try their luck, risk all the money that they had, and when they would lose, they would shoot themselves in despair, in disappointment. When the person loses all the money, so in disappointment, he would shoot himself. So the Germans, what they had done? They had stopped their rulers to make money in this way. The people living there, they said, don't want these gaming houses. But there was no one to stop this kinglet of Monaco. He remained with the monopoly of the business. So it was only his gaming house which was left out. So now everyone who wants to gamble goes to Monaco, the small, tiny little kingdom. Everyone goes there to gamble. Whether they win or lose, the kinglet surely earns income. He knows it is a dirty game, but he has no other way to earn special revenue, to earn his special revenue. This is the only way. The author uses the proverb, you can't earn stone palaces by honest labor. This is a sentence used in the text, which means that easy money can be earned by dishonest means only. Easy money, how it can be earned? By dishonest means. Stone palaces cannot be got by honest labor. The kinglet of Monaco knows it's a dirty game, and to draw revenue from drinks and tobacco is not a nice thing. But what to do? He has to live, he has to rule his kingdom. So he lives and reigns, that REIGNS, reign, rule, and rakes, earns the money and holds his court with all the ceremony of a real king. How a real king performs his duties in the kingdom, so does the kinglet of Monaco. Coming to the paragraph on last paragraph of page number 7 of the textbook. Here the author says that the kinglet of Monaco has his coronation. Coronation means the crowning ceremony. He has the coronation like any other king. He has his levees, that is visitors who come to the king's court. Levees are the visitors that come to the king's court usually in the morning time. The king will have to look after the visitors who come with their problems. These are called as levees. The kinglet also rewards, sentences and pardons. He also has his reviews, councils, laws and courts of justice just like other kings, but on a smaller scale, because the kingdom is a toy kingdom, a tiny kingdom, so it is on a small scale. Coming to page number 8 of the text, keep on referring the text, children, you will understand better. Shall I start? Page number 8 of the text. The author speaks of an incident that happened a few years ago. So on page number 8 he is telling, the author is describing about a story. He says, a few years ago, a murder was committed in his toy kingdom. So the king says that a few years ago, murder was committed here in this toy kingdom. People there were peaceful and such a thing had never happened before. Earlier, people living there were living peacefully. Nothing of such a sort had happened there. Such a murder had never taken place. But now, such a thing has happened. There was a legal system in this kingdom. The judges assembled and tried the case in most judicial manner. There were judges and prosecutors and jurymen and the barristers. Here, let me tell you, prosecutor is a public official who institutes the legal proceedings. A public official who institutes legal proceedings is a prosecutor. A juryman, the person who helps a judge to make a decision, to take a decision. Barrister is a lawyer. So, they all argued and judged and at last condemned the criminal to have his head cut off as the law directs. Finally, what was their decision? To cut off the head of the criminal. They submitted the sentence to the prince, the kinglet of Monaco. The prince read the sentence and confirmed it, saying that if the fellow must be executed, then execute him. So the kinglet says, if he has to be executed, execute him. But there was one problem in the matter. The problem was they neither had a guillotine for cutting heads off nor an executor. They neither had a machine, that is the guillotine is a machine to cut the heads off. They neither had the machine nor they had a person to cut his head, to do this work, to put the head in a machine. So nobody was there. So what the ministers decided? The ministers considered this matter and took before the French government. They inquired for the machine and an executioner, and also they asked the French government the cost of it. The French government looked into the matter. They replied and said that the cost would be 16,000 francs. Franc is a unit of currency in France, unit of currency of the France. So, The French government looked into the matter. They told the cost will be 16,000 francs. This was laid before the king. Everything they had to inform the kinglet. So they took it before the prince. They took it before the kinglet. He thought over it. He thought over it and said the criminal is not worth the money. The kinglet said, we have to spend 16,000 francs for this fellow. He's not worth it. He says, can't it be done somehow cheaper? So a council was called to consider what could be done. An enquiry was sent to the king of Italy now. The Italian government replied, saying that they would be happy to send a machine and an executor at the cost of 12,000 francs. The French government told 16,000 francs. The Italian government told 12,000 francs. They said that, the Italian government said that the travelling expenses also were included in that 12,000 francs only. This was cheaper than the French government. But still it was not too cheap. Still it was not too cheap, it was more only. It was too much. The criminal was not worth the money. So another council was called. They discussed and considered how it could be still more cheap, that is less expensive. Why could not one of the soldiers do this work in a rough and homely fashion? So they thought, why one of our soldiers only can't do this work? Why can't he cut the head of this criminal? Got it? Page number 9. The general was called and asked to find a soldier who could cut the man's head off. In war, the soldiers don't mind killing people. In fact, they are trained for it. But to cut a man's head, no soldier was ready. None of the soldiers was ready. The soldiers did not agree to do this work. So soldiers did not agree to do this work, for which they were not trained. The soldiers said, we are not trained to cut a man's head off. So none of us are going to do this work. Now what has to be done? Again the ministers considered and reconsidered. They assembled a commission and a committee and a subcommittee. And at last they decided that the best thing was to alter the death sentence and give the criminal life imprisonment. So the punishment was altered. Altered means to change. First life imprisonment was given. Now first death punishment was given. Now life imprisonment is given. This would be much cheaper, and also it would enable the kinglet to show his mercy. So the prince, that is the kinglet, agreed to this, and so the matter was arranged. Now there was one more hitch, that is one more problem. There was no suitable prison for the man sentenced for life. So they altered the death sentence, and they put him, decided to put him in the prison, life imprisonment. But now one more hitch, that is a problem. Hitch means a problem. Problem was where to keep him. Whole life they have to keep him. He was a young fellow. There was only a small lockup where people were kept temporarily. But it was not very strong to keep a person permanently, lifelong. However, they managed to find a place and finally put the man there. He was a young fellow. They placed a guard over him. The guard had to watch him. Whom? The criminal. He had to watch the criminal, and also he had to fetch food for the criminal from the palace kitchen. So that guard had to get food from the palace kitchen to this criminal who was in the prison, and he had to look after that criminal. The prisoner remained there for month after month. Month after month they started giving him food. That guard was kept. So on, month after month passed off. Comfortably he was leading a life in the prison, criminal. A year passed. The king now began to think of the expenses. The king was worried, small kingdom, little income, how much he'll spend on this criminal. He noticed that he was spending 600 francs a year on the prisoner and also the food expenses. He was spending so much on this criminal. The king said, this fellow is young and might live for 50 another years. Another 50 years this person will live. So he took the matter to be serious and again called the ministers. The kinglet thought and finally he said, this person is still very young. If he lives for 50 years, I have to spend 50 years for him. So he calls the ministers. The king told the ministers to find a cheaper way to deal with the prisoner, as the present plan was too expensive. The ministers met, considered, reconsidered, finally thought of dismissing the guard. So finally what they decided, let us remove this guard. Let this prisoner come out of the prison, take his own food from the palace and let him go and be in the prison. They felt that he would run away and finally decided, let him run away and be hanged to him. So what these ministers thought was, this person, if we remove the guard, this person will try to escape. That is what they thought. If we remove this guard, there will be nobody to watch the criminal, then the criminal will escape from there. He will try to run away. Finally, the ministers reported to the kinglet about the deliberations. Deliberations means discussion over the matter. Deliberation. Hot discussion over the matter. Hot discussion it was. The kinglet agreed with them. Okay, the kinglet agreed for this also. The guard was dismissed. They all waited to see what would happen. They thought that he would run away. They saw that dinner time, the criminal came out, not finding his guard. They had not told about this plan to the criminal. So, dinner time, he was waiting for the food. The guard would bring. So, the criminal saw that guard was not there. So, the criminal went to the kitchen palace. So, in the palace there was a kitchen. He went there to fetch his food, then returned back to the prison, shut the door and stayed inside. Next day also the same thing happened. What ministers thought? This person will run away from here, he will escape. But this person opened the prison door, came out, went to the palace kitchen, took food, again went back to the prison and closed the door of the prison. He did not show a least sign of running away. So what was to be done now? They considered the matter again. One of the ministers directly asked him, why don't you run away? These ministers were fed up of seeing all this. So one of them directly went to that man and asked, why don't you run away? There is no guard to look after you. And the kinglet also would not mind, you run away. He will give him a suggestion. The man now says, I know the prince, that is the kinglet, would not mind. But I have no place to go. You have ruined my character by your sentence. They had given him death sentence. So he says, by your death sentence, you will have ruined my life. People will turn their backs on me. The criminal now says, because of the death imprisonment or the death sentence and the life imprisonment which you people have given me, the other people, if I go back to the city, the other people will ignore me. They will turn their backs. The man says, he was treated badly and it wasn't fair. He said that they could have executed him. They did not do that. People would no more respect him. He says, you would have cut off my head, it would be better. He further says that he was imprisoned for life, but he did not complain. The man now says to the guard, now says to that minister, see, first what you all did, you all gave me death sentence, that you all altered, and now you all give me life imprisonment. Neither I complained for the death sentence, nor I complained for your life imprisonment. You all removed the guard who was fetching food for me. was looking after me. For that I didn't complain. A guard was put to fetch food for him and he did not complain about that. The guard was taken away and still he was quiet. And now they want him to run away. He says, now you people want me to run away. The man said, he can't agree to that. The man said, he will not agree to that. He said, you may do whatever you like, but he would not go away. The man said, I am not going to go out from this prison. I am comfortably leading my life here. If I go out, people will turn their backs. No person will talk to me. People will ignore me. So I am not going to go. I am not going to run away from here. Now what has to be done? Once again the council was summoned. They considered, reconsidered, finally thought that the only way to get rid of this man was to offer him a pension. So they all decided, let us give him some money and tell him to go home. Then report it to the prince. The prince said, somehow get rid of this person, somehow get rid of the prisoner. Finally, he was fixed a sum of 600 francs as pension. See this fate of this people. They gave him the punishment that death sentence they gave him. His head had to be cut off. They didn't do that. They altered life imprisonment. That was not possible. Guard was put, food was given to him in the prison. Expenses were more. Finally they told him to run away. The criminal was not ready to run away from there. Finally, they decided to give him a pension of 600 francs. The man now said, he didn't mind going away if he was regularly paid 600 francs as pension. So the matter was settled. He received 1/3 of his annuity in advance. Annuity is the annual pension amount fixed. Annuity is the annual pension amount fixed. So he said, give me 1/3 in advance. I will take that money and go from here. He left the king's dominion. Dominion means territory. He left the king's palace. He went to a place across the borders which was not very far. It was only a quarter of an hour by rail, that is 15 minutes by rail. A quarter of an hour means 15 minutes by rail. He emigrated and settled there. There he brought a bit of land and started market, gardening. He now lives comfortably. He goes on proper time to draw his pension. At times he goes to the gambling tables. See this man, stakes 2 or 3 francs, sometimes wins, sometimes loses, and then returns home happily. He lives peacefully and well. Finally, the author concludes by saying that it is a good thing that a man committed a crime in a country where they did not execute him, but they let him go. They not only let him go, but also offered him a pension of 600 francs. So, dear children, that is why the lesson is titled as Too Dear. Dealing with the criminal proved to be too dear to the prince and the people of his kingdom. Hence ends the lesson Too Dear. Hope you all have enjoyed the lesson, understood the lesson. So what you have to do now? Like, share and subscribe. Thank you.